Hello everyone, I am Poshana. Today I'm going to finish my homework on how to read the text correctly. So I will start from part 1. Part 1. See, su, so, sip, as, ras, pose, sit, shall, washing, Swedish, style, Sight machine, and English, sub, so, special, shrank, sad, finished, shouldn't, sure, with, demonstration, television, treasure, garage, casual clothes, jaw, Asia, measuring, an unusual collection, chips, sip, chip, cherry, sap, chop, cash, cat, watch, children, butcher shop, Mrs. Church, check, chomp, chops, much, chaser, solder, which, cheaper, delicious chicken, choose, children's lunch, orange juice, rich child, which job, village jail, match chain, college chase, large gentleman, chair, which chair, large cherries, huge jam jar, how much cheese, teach German. So the next I will go into the part 2. More US adults who do not already have children are saying they are unlikely to ever have them. A new Pew Research Center survey finds findings that could draw renewed attention to the risks declining birth rates in industrialized nations. Experts are concerned that the U.S. birth rate, which has declined for the 6th straight year, may not fuel enough population growth on its own to keep the future economy afloat and fund social programs. Social programs, women between the ages of 16 and 49 and men between 18 and 59 who say they are not parents were asked the questions. Thinking about the future, how likely is it that you will have children someday? In October, 26% of them say it is very likely, a 6-point drop from 2018 when 32% answered very likely. Meanwhile, the share of Americans who answered not too likely in 2021 grew to 21% compared to 16% in 2018. When asked for a reason, 56% of childless adults who say it is not at all or not too likely they will ever have children said it's because they just don't want them. That's a change from in 2018 when 63% of childless adults in this category said it was because they had no desire for children. This time around, 43% stated other reasons including medical issues, economic or financial reason, and lack of partner. Hell out of the quicksand. How the child care crisis is keeping moms out of work. When the pandemic led to a lack of child care, single mothers like Dennis Tyree were left in the lurch, unable to work, coupled with the recent release of federal demographic data. This poll points to a long-term evolution in parenthood traits in the United States. The spiraling cost of child care. healthcare and education, along with a global instability including the coronavirus pandemic and climate change, could all be contributing a broader change in attitudes to marriage and priorities in life. U.S. United States. Birth rates Birth rates fall off to its lowest level in decades in the wake of pandemic. In April, the Census Bureau reported that in the last decade, the U.S. population grew at the second slowest rate for any 10 years period since the nation's founding. Pew surveyed 3,866 parents and non-parents online in late October as part of a broader study of nearly 10,000 U.S. adults known as the American Trans Panel Survey. Those who said they have no children were asked to rate their desire to have them in the future, while others who said they already have children were asked to rate their likelihood of having more. The same questions were asked in a similar poll Pew conducted in late July to early August 2018, enabling a comparison of trends over time. There was no difference based on gender in the responses among parents and non-parents. According to Pew, men and women are equally likely to say they will probably not have kids or more kids in the future. There was a difference based on age. However, with adults in their 40s far more likely than younger adults to say they are unlikely to have any or any more children in the future. The Biden administration has attempted to tackle which recently passed the House and is now moving to the Senate. The bill includes funding for universal pre-K as well as the first national paid family and medical leave program. Next, I'm going to part 3. Read this story. She was walking lazily, for the fierce April sun was directly overhead. Her umbrella blocked its rays, but nothing blocked the heat, the sort of wrath. While heat that crushes you with its energy, a few buffalo were tethered under coconuts, browsing the perched verges. Occasionally a car went past, leaving its treads in the melting pits like the wake of a ship at sea. Otherwise, it was quiet and she saw no one. In her long white Sunday dress, you might have taken Jenny Narin for 14 or 15. In fact, she was well, a happy, uncomplicated child with a nature as open as the red hibiscus that decorated her black waist-legged hair. Generations earlier, her family had come to Trinidad from India as overseas on the sugar plantations. Her father had some success through buying and clearing land around Rio Cristalino and planting it with coffee. On the dusty first 20 yards ahead of Jenny, a car pulled up. She had noticed it cross by once before, but she did not recognize it and could not make out the driver through its dark windows, themselves as black as its gleaming paintwork. As she walked past it, the driver's glass started to open. "Hello, Jenny," she heard behind her. She paused and turned. A slight color rose beneath her dusky skin. Rafiq Rajani was tall and lean, and always well dressed. His black eyes and large white teeth flashed in the sunlight as he spoke. Everyone in Rio Cristalino knew Rafi. Jenny often heard her unmarried sister talk roughly of him. of how if only their father were alive and they still had land, of one of them might marry him, and then they will squabble over who it might be and laugh at Jenny because he was too simple for any man to want. How do you know my name, Rafi? She asked with thrill. How do you know mine? Everyone knows your name. Everyone knows your name. You are Mr. Kurjani's son, right? And where are you going, Jenny? She hesitated and looked down at the ground again. To chapel, she said with a faint smile. But Jenny good Hindus. Go to the temple. His rich cultured voice was gently mocking as he added with a laugh. Or maybe the temple ponies aren't your taste in color. She blushed more deeply at the reference to Father Oliver. She did not know. She did not know how to reply. It was true that she liked the young friend Price, with his funny accent and blue eyes, but she had been going to the Catholic chapel for months before he arrived. She loved its cheerful hymns and its simple creed of one God, so different from those miserable Hindu gods who squabble with each other like her sister at home. But added to that, the figurity of Ravi's remark bewildered her because his family were known for their breeding. People always say that Rafi would be a man of honor like his father. Rafi looked suddenly grave. His dark skin seems even darker. It may be that he regretted his words. Possibly she saw the confusion in Jenny's wide brown eyes. In any case, he did not wait for an answer. Can I offer you a lift to chapel? In my 21st birthday present, he asked, putting his sunglasses back on. She noticed how thick their farmers were, real gold. She thought, like the big, fat watch on his wrist. It's Mercedes from Papa. Do you like it? He added nonchalantly from the shade of her umbrella. Jenny peered up at a small lone cloud that hung motionless above them. Then sun was beating down mercilessly, and there was an urge in the air and overpowering sense of growth. With a handkerchief, she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Rafi gave a tongue at his collar. It's air conditioned. It's air conditioned, Jenny. And you want to be late for chapel? He continued, reading her mind, but chapel must have been the last thing on Rafi's mind. When Jenny, after a moment, hesitation, accepted his offer. For her drove her instead to quiet sugar field outside town, and there, with the Mercedes concealed among the sugar canes, he introduced himself into her. Jenny was in a daze, young as he was. She barely understood what's happening to her. The beat of calypso filled her ears, and the sugar canes tore over her as the cold draft from the air conditioner played against her knee. Afterwards, clutching the ragged flower that had been torn from her hair, she lay among the tall, sweet smiling canes and sobbed until the brief tropical twilight turned to starry night. But she told no one, not even Father Oliver. 2 weeks later, the little marked town of Rio Cristalino was alive with a gossip. Rafi Kurjani had been promised the hand of Sunita Morpholani. Like the Kirjanis, the Morpholanis were an established Indian family, one of the wealthiest in the Caribbean. But while the Kirjanis were diplomats, the Morpholanis were a commercial family. They had made their fortune in retailing long before the collapse in oil prices had emptied their customer pockets. And now Morpholani's stores were scattered throughout Trinidad and some of the other islands. Prudently, they had diversified into banking and insurance, and as the result, their influence but fell at the highest level. It was a benevolent influence, of course, never abused, for a people always say the Morpholanis were respectable family and well above reports. They had houses in Port of Spain, Tobago and Barbados, as well as in England and India. But their main residence was a magnificent, sprawling, colonial-style mansion just to the north of Rio Cristalino. The urgent merit would be the social event of the following year. When Jenny heard of Rafi's enjoyment plotting, she had confidence for him grew into a sort of numb hater. She was as soon haunted a longing reply that heartless, arrogant brute. She would give anything to humiliate him, to see that luring, conceited grin wipe from his face. But outwardly she was unmoved. On weekdays she went to school, and on Sundays she went still to Father Oliver's afternoon service. Girl, you sure does have a lot to convince to the Whitey, her mother would say to her each time she come home late for chapel. He's not Whitey, he's a man of God. That us may be shy, but don't forget he does be a man first. The month passed and she did not see Rafi again. And then it rained. Although August the rain hardly stopped. It rattled persistently on the galvanized roof until you thought you would go mad with the noise. And it stopped. The air was as sticky as trickle, and you prayed for it to rain again. Then one day in October, towards the end of the wet season, when Jenny's family were celebrating her only brother's 18th birthday, something happened that had been dreading for weeks. She was lying in the hammock on the balcony, playing with her 6-year-old nephew Penny. Suddenly, Penny cried out, "Jenny, why are you so fat?" Throughout the little frame house, all celebration stopped. On the balcony, curious eyes were turned upon Jenny, and you could see what the boy meant. "God have mercy on you, Virginia. What's the shape of your belly?" cried Mrs. Naring, exploding with indignation and pulling her daughter indoors, away from the prying neighbors' ears. Her voice was loud and hard, and there was blackness in her eyes like the blackness of the skies before thunder. Who could she have been so blind? She cursed herself for it, and harsh questions burst from her lips. "How does you bring such shame upon us, girl? What worthless layabouts does you throw yourself upon? What manner have you now? No decent man, that does be sure. And why does you blacken your father's name like this at your age? The man as didn't have life to see you born. Thank the gods he didn't have to know of this. You sure get some explaining to your braces. Man of God, child." At last, her words were exhausted, and she sat down heavily, her weak heart pounding generously, and her chest heaving from the exertion of her outburst. Then Jenny told her mother of the afternoon that Rafi Gurjani had raped her. There was a long silence after that, and all you could hear was Mrs. Narin whistling. When at last she spoke, her words were heavy and disjointed. If anybody have to get damnation, that Gurjani's boy will get it, she said. Jenny's sister were awestruck. Shall we take her over the health center, Ma? Asked Indra. The midwife comes today. Is you crazy, girl? You all just know how the moment was run. Simmered like a duck's bottom. You all leave this to me. That night, Mrs. Narin took your doctor to see Dr. Khan, an old friend of her husband Hope's. The creation she could count on. There was no doubt about it. The child was pregnant, and what can I do, Dr. Khan? Asked Mr. Narin. Marry her off, quick as you can, the lean old doctor replied bluntly. Mrs. Narin scoffed. Who will take her now, doctor? I just beg you, there's nothing you can do for us. A welcome breeze came through the slats of the surgery windows. Outside you could hear the shrill, persistent sound of cicadas, while mosquitoes crowded at the screens. Attracted by the bare bulb over the simple desk, Dr. Khan sighed and peered over the frames of his glasses. Then he lowered his voice and spoke weirdly, like a man who had said the same thing many times. I might arrange something for this baby once it's born, but it must be born, my dear. Your daughter is slimly built. She's young, a child herself. To you, she looks really there months pregnant. Don't fool yourself. If the dates she's given us are correct, in 3 months she'll be full term. Anything now would be too massive. And if it's born, asked Mr. Narin falteringly, if it's born, what does happen then? No, Ma, I want it anyway. I want to keep it, said Jenny quietly. Don't be a fool, child. It's my baby, Ma. Ma, I want to have it. I want to keep it. And who's to look after you and pay for the baby? Even if the Gurjanis does agree to pay, who does you hope to marry? I'll marry, don't worry. You'll marry? You just be a fool. Who will you marry? Gurjani. Ma, it's going to marry Rafi Gurjani. Dr. Khan gave a chuckle. So your daughter is not such a fool as you think. He said, I told you to marry her off, and the Gurjani's boy worth a try. What does she have to lose? She's too clever. So Rafi Gurjani was comforted with the pregnant Jenny and reminded of the Sunday afternoon. In the dry season, when the canes were ready for harvesting, to surprise of the Narins, he did not argue at all. He offered at once to marry Jenny. It may be that for him it was a welcome opportunity to escape a connubial arrangement for which he had little appetite. To Sunita Morpholani, indisputable background, nobody ever pretended that she had looks or possibly he foresaw awkward Polish question that might have been difficult to answer once the fruits of his desire saw the light of day. Mrs. Narin was staggered. Even Jenny was surprised at how little resistance he put up. Perhaps she thought with a wry smile, he's not really so bad. Whatever his reason, you had to admit Rafi a kid honorably, and so did the jilted Morpholani family. And privately, they felt their humiliation clearly, publicly. They bore it with composure, and people were amazed that they remained on speaking terms with the man who had insulted one of their women and broke her heart. Sunita's 5 brothers even invited Rafi to spend a day with them at their seaside Villa Miero. And as Rafi had been a friend of the family all his life, he saw no reason to refuse. The Morpholani brothers chose a Tuesday for the outing. There was a little point, they said, in going at the weekend when the working people littered the beach. And one of their Land Rovers for the 20-mile drive from Rio Cristalino. They were in high spirits and joked with Rafi while their servants stood cold chicken and salad beneath the reef bench seats and packed the ice boxes with beer and punch and rum. Then they scanned the sky for clouds and congratulated themselves on choosing such a fine day. Suraj, the eldest brother, looked at his watch and his feet shifted uneasily as he said, "It's time to hit the road." His brother gave a laugh and clambered on board. It was an odd, sardonic laugh. The hardtop Land Rover crossed through Rio Cristalino to the crossroads at the town center. Already the market traders were pitching their roadside stalls and erecting great canvas umbrellas shaded them from the sun or rain. The promise of commerce was in the air, and the traders looked about expectantly as they loaded their stall with fresh mangoes or put off the finishing touches to displays of giant melons whose fleshy pink innards glistened succulently under cellophane. The Land Rover turned east towards Miero and moments later was passing the cemetery on the edge. of town. The road to the coast was busy with traffic at both directions, still carrying products to market, and the frequent bends and potholes made the journey slow, at least on an uphill straight about 6 miles from Miero. The Land Rover was able to pick up speed. Its rear tires beat on the reflectors thuds like a drum roll, and the early morning sun flashed through the coconut palms. Suddenly, a terrible thing happened. The rear door of the Land Rover swung open and Rafi Gurjani tumbled out, falling helplessly beneath the wheels of a heavily laden truck. At the inquest, the coroner acknowledged that the nature and extent of Rafi's injuries made it impossible to determine whether he was killed instantly by the fall or subsequently by the truck. But it was clear, at least he felt, that Rafi had been alive when he fell from the Land Rover. The verdict was that due to misadventure. 3 days later, Rafi remains were cremated. According to Hendrik, as usual, a crush of people from all over Trinidad, distant relative of classmates, everyone claiming even the most tenuous connection with the dead man, come to mourn at the riverside pier outside Miero. Some of them were convinced that they could see in Rafi's death the hands of the gods, and they point for evidence to the gray sky and the unseasonal rain. But the flames defined the rain, and the stench of burning flesh filled the air. A few spoke darkly of murder. Did not the Morpholanes have a compelling motive, and not by chance did they have no opportunity and the means, but mostly they agreed that it was tragic accident. It made little difference that it was a Morpholani truck that had finished Rafi off. Morpholani trucks were everywhere. They watched as the ashes were thrown into the muddy Otay River, soon to be lost in the warm waters of the Atlantic. Anyway, said one old mourner with a shrug, who are we to ask questions? The police closed their files on the case before, and the boy was cold, and he soaked the last of the rain from his umbrella and slapped impatiently at the mosquito. You might have thought that the shock of Rafi's death would have induced in Jenny a premature delivery, but quite the reverse. She attended inquest, and she mourned at the funeral. The accepted date came and went. 6 weeks passed before Jenny, by now 13, gave birth to a son at the public maternity hospital in San Fernando. When they saw the baby, the nurses glanced anxiously at each other. Then they took him away without letting Jenny see him. Eventually, they returned with one of the doctors, a big Creole, who assumed his most unrifled beside manner to reassure Jenny that the baby was well. It's true, has a little pasty mother, he said as a nurse placed the baby in Jenny's arms. But you see, there'll be the late delivery, and don't forget you are very young and you have both had a rough time. Wait a day, 3 days. His eyes are turned. His will soon have a healthy color. Jenny looked into her son's blue eyes and kissed them, and in doing so a tremendous feeling of dryness suddenly came over her. They were so very, very blue, so like Father Oliver's. She sighed at the irony of it all. The waste of it all was the Creole doctor really so stupid? Surely he knew as well as he did the pilot looks could never go. Thank you.